they get. I remember when we had that H1N1 outbreak back when I was in high school, and H1N1 is several times deadlier than COVID-19, yet barely anyone, really did anything. There wasn't this mass panic. The only thing that happened was we had to watch a weekly PSA that said, wash your hands and sneeze into your sleep, but that was it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we might be going. It said 3 seconds for the last 10 seconds now, so I don't know how long we've been on. But,
Yeah.
all right,
Sorry,
I think we are live, so... Hello, everyone. I'm finally doing the December live stream for the supporters because I've been out with COVID, and that's not any kind of, satire or hyperbole or anything. I actually am COVID positive, so...
Is that why you're also not airing yourself either, because you don't want to see people what you look like?
It's just because I don't have the energy.
Yeah.
I'd have set everything up, turn on all the lights and everything. Nah,
yeah, you probably don't even look good either. You're probably like still very pale. Your hair's a mess from laying in bed all day. Yeah.
It's just I didn't want to fool with it.
Yeah.
People don't want to see my face that badly. So.
Yeah.
Hello, Pierre, JC, and SKN in the chat.
Yeah. Yeah, so sorry, people. So sorry, people. If you give him a super chat, do not ask him to do the Lord Killian voice because he can't do it.
Oh, I'm definitely not doing a Lord Killian voice right now.
Yeah, because that's not that's the last thing he wants to do is put his throat under more pressure. No.
Yeah, I mean, hell, I'm relatively healthy right now, and trying to do gravelly voices like that are bad. Like, I was listening to a Tom Watts song, and I was trying to sing along to him, and goddamn, by the middle of the song, my throat was just sore as hell. It's like, how the hell does that guy do it?
I don't know if there's some kind of voice training you can do to make that easier or what.
Well, then again,
Sorry.
Well, then again, Tom Watts was also a heavy smoker for most of his life, although he quit recently, so that probably contributed.
Yeah. Yeah, Pierre says COVID vaccinations have started in Europe and anti-vaxxers are making their comeback. Oh, they've already been added. They've been saying like this is a plot by Bill Gates to depopulate the world or whatever. I do not understand that at all. I do not get where they're coming from.
And the funny irony about this is that there actually is a legit cover-up of COVID-19. Oh.
But maybe when I'm feeling better, I'll do a video on this. But I mean, if you look at the ingredients of the vaccine, there's not really anything to worry about. There's like one lipid that if you have an allergy, if you're really sensitive to, anaphylaxis and things like that, that one ingredient can give you trouble. So check with your doctor. But if you're not allergic to anything, then there's absolutely nothing in this that'll harm you.
Yeah, it's not. Well, I've mentioned this before on a previous one that I was on with you guys. I think we should have more choice, so on top more choices for it, and not just have just the vaccine and the needle and whatnot, like the hyperimmunized colostrum in pill form. You can just dehydrate it, make sure it's at a certain ratio of immunoglobulins, tweak that a little, that have it, the antibody immunoglobulins would be for that, and then standardize just a little bit and then dehydrate it and it'll concentrate immensely. Give them that. Or say a standardized extract concentrate of andrographis which actually has some potential immunomodulating, antiviral, and hepatoprotective effects, which I give them a little choice and calm masses down at the same time. So
well, fainting after a vaccine isn't all that unusual. I mean, that's why they say after a vaccine just to kind of sit there for 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I've had flu vaccines that have knocked me out a little bit. Yeah, I actually one time had to lose I actually had to call in sick one time at an old job because I had a flu vaccine, and I guess I had a slightly because I hadn't had a flu vaccine in a while, my in a long time. I've never had one before. My body didn't know how to react. So the very next day, I was like tired. I was coughing all the time, and I'm like, what is wrong with me? And this happened at Walmart, and I actually met the lady who gave me the vaccine, and she did say, yeah, that does happen, especially if you've never had a flu vaccine before, or it's been forever. You do get kind of, flu-like symptoms because your body's reacting to it, not as bad as the real thing, but, you are gonna...
Yeah, it's your immune system kicking into gear. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And SKM takes us back to that old Daffy Duck cartoon. Yoicks and away! Crash! Yoicks and away! Crash. Talking about California going in and out of lockdown. I mean, it's like after Roy Cooper got reelected, and I do not understand how Roy Cooper got reelected, but, he very quickly took that as, a verification of everything he was doing in COVID, and then put on this new lockdown with all these, stricter, restaurant and everything else. And that's when everything surged.
Funny you talk about the election and all that, because it reminds me of all those people that get angry when they hear what Joe Biden's gonna do, and then I ask them, well, if you hate what Joe Biden's planning on doing in 2021, why did you vote for him? It's like, well, because I wanted Donald Trump out of office.
Yep.
It's like, really? See, that's what it does to you, when you
That's what the lesser of two evils does.
Yeah. It's like, I cannot tell you how many people I've met, that I asked them, oh, you voted for Joe Biden. Why? And their answer is, well, I just wanted Trump out of office. It's like, people, I'm sorry, but, this is why I don't want to be cynical, but I don't think 2021 is going to be any better, largely because, it does kind of look like Biden's going to win. And I'm just like, yeah, do you think he's really going to fix everything?
If anything, he'll make it worse.
Yeah.
There's enough fraud, evident, and affidavit confirmed his victim illegitimate anyway.
But the courts, everyone's saying, oh, well, see, the courts are showing it up, but it's like, no, the courts keep throwing it out because of the doctrine of laches, which basically means laches is from like a French word for lazy, I think. It basically means you waited too long. So, like, if you wait for years to press charges on someone or sue someone or something like that, and so much time has gone by that they can't possibly defend themselves from it because they don't have their records and everything going back that far to prove it, even if there's not a statute of limitations, they can cite the doctrine of laches, which was just you waited too long. Well, these are cases that were filed like a day or two after the election, and they're citing the doctrine of laches.
So
did it come all here? Oh, sorry, Wes.
What I was gonna say was a lot of these the quote unquote conservative, and I say that in quotation marks, you already know. They started ranting about the fact that the SCOTUS is nervous about the riots. No, I'm kind of like salty. I'm like Salty Cracker. I think they're nervous about getting their cars bombed by somebody that working in the park. Like that one car bombing that Salty Cracker reported on that everybody else tend to glaze over in the mainstream. And
SKM says that strip clubs are considered essential in California while churches are not. I will say that I honestly believe strip clubs are much greater benefit to society than churches, but there you go. Hello, Executioner.
Still, I think the point stands is that some politicians are using, the whole essential business clauses to basically shut down groups they don't like. Like I've heard.
Oh yeah, it's completely arbitrary. Yeah.
Like I have heard stories of, of them shutting down businesses that they don't like, but letting. Like I read somewhere, like they've even been shutting down, like meetings for certain political parties too, saying, "Oh nope, it's not essential. You got to do it offline." But their political party is holding a rally, and they're fine.
Yeah, or there's things like they'll shut down like this small family-owned hardware store, but they let Lowe's keep operating, so the small businesses, as usual, get the shaft.
Yep. And in all honesty, Shane, I've heard a lot of people say that the real reason why we've been having all these riots is largely because when you lock people, in their house for so long, they go a little crazy,
I almost want to say this was kind of planned, but I can't prove it. But the whole thing's fucking it. Lock strategy, lack of science to it, the whole night.
You're breaking up, Wes.
Excuse me, I was putting a heater aside because it's kind of warm for me in my room today, but I was trying to say I can't prove it, but the whole lockdown thing seems kind of planned. I can't prove it, but the whole thing's so iffy, it almost seems it. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. It's just highly suspect the lack of science to the whole thing,
Yeah, JC, it is about really a protection racket, and Ghost Dog has been in lockdown since Monday, so I had no Christmas. Yeah, it did not feel good having to stay, locked in my office for Christmas while, hearing the family out in the living room having a fun Christmas. But that is what it is.
Yeah, that's actually another problem too, because it's not even just like stay at home. Like you said, they're saying if you're sick, like you basically have to sleep in the basement or somewhere, and you have to lock yourself up, and even when you're better, you can't leave until you're symptom free, and you got to scrub the place down. So
I basically have to wear a mask when I'm in other parts of the house.
Yeah.
So, I go out there as little as possible. I kind of stock this room up with pretty much what I need.
Are you and your wife also doing the whole thing where where like there's labeled stuff that's just for you and you alone, basically?
We're not doing that, but I got the stuff back here in my office that I'm using. I've kind of stocked up on that.
Yeah. Although I still say this is kind of funny. Hey, Hey, Executioner, sorry, we can barely hear you. You're like in and out. I still think it's kind of funny, though, how it takes a global pandemic to be doing, basic hygiene practices that you should be doing regardless if there's a pandemic or not.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a joke like that one time. I was watching a South Park episode, and it was the pee episode where Stan admits that he doesn't always wash his hands after going to the bathroom, and one of the comments was, and that is one of the reasons why germs will never truly go away. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they're just in the environment all around you. They're gonna get around.
I know that. It's just a joke. The joke is that, that's the cause of a lot of, common colds and flus. It's not, it just popped out of nowhere. It's because you went to the bathroom and you didn't properly wash your hands. And no,
but that is relatively little of it. It's important, but it's relatively little of it when you consider that the reason why we get so much more of the cold and flus in November, it's not because we're using the bathroom more. We're not. We're using it the same amount. It's just the fact that we're staying indoors and we're sharing the same air as everyone else.
Yeah.
And these things get in the air and they get on stuff, whether you wash your hands or don't.
I have actually heard from one person that actually did say that, that if you have a really bad cold or flu and you want to reduce the chance of spreading it to your other friends and family during the winter, is apart from, keeping yourself away, if it's not too cold outside, just open a window.
Yep. Just circulate the air through.
Circulate the air through. That lets in that circulates the air.
I think his connection's gone to shit.
Yeah. Every time
he seems in and out.
Every time Executioner tries to join, he always gets connection issues. Poor guy.
SKM, isn't the survival rate over 99%? I think the infection fatality rate is something like 0.3%. And then you have the case fatality rate, which is the fatality rate among people who actually have symptoms, that they're considered a case. And normally I think that's been about 1%, but they've just kind of gone crazy and they're calling every infection a case, even if the person doesn't have any symptoms.
Yeah, because if I recall correctly, that was one thing that they were concerned about is that most people that have caught COVID-19, they barely actually get sick at all.
Yeah, but
Like,
they're also finding that asymptomatic people are less likely to pass it on. And
Yeah.
for some weird reason, that's happening about elementary schools, because normally if something is going around, the elementary schools are like ground zero. I mean, those places are basically germ warfare. But with
Yeah.
COVID, it's actually very rare for a grade school kid to pass it around. And they think it's because they're getting some protection from the MMR vaccine. That something about that is helping the immune system, not get that and not spread it around. Because, see, I was born a bit too early for that. I had separate, injections for measles, mumps, and rubella. And then it was like in the 70s or 80s when they came out with the MMR. And that's about the same cutoff as you see for the age. When you talk about people, 50 or older, being in the higher risk group for it, well, that was before the MMR vaccine. So,
Yeah.
And yes, JC, it is flu season. Go get your flu shot.
Yeah. And it's pretty funny, and I think another reason why people are panicking about COVID is because it's an exotic virus. And we're like, oh, it comes from a foreign country. We never heard of it. It must be super duper deadly, Whereas, like I said, the flu is pretty much, the deadliest illness most people catch, but we're so used to it that a lot of people, in fact, actually, I've heard the real reason why it kills a lot of people is because of that attitude. They're like, oh, it's just a little flu. I'm fine. Buddy, you're turning blue and you're barely struggling to breathe. No, it's fine. I'll just take a little nap, take some painkillers, and he's dead. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, this kind of thing, these new viruses like COVID, humanity has been putting up with this kind of thing for thousands of years. Why are we all of a sudden behaving like infants about it?
Yeah. Fun fact about the Spanish flu outbreak that I read about, because I saw a documentary about that. The bizarre thing about the Spanish flu is that despite the fact that it was so deadly and it was such a big pandemic, if you actually look at the newspapers, not a lot of people really talked about it, partially because it was censored because it first popped up during the war. But another reason, too, is, the general attitude was it's like, so we're having a deadly flu season. We've had them before. It sucks, but it happens.
Yep.
Yeah, but we're kind of...
And I mean, I've made this point since the beginning. Our founders, every few years, would have another pandemic or epidemic go through, a bad flu season or typhus or... whatever, smallpox, all that sort of stuff. And yet they still, when they wrote the First Amendment, guaranteed our right to peaceably assemble, which of course has been completely trashed this year with all the lockdowns.
Oh yeah. And that's another thing too, also, is that people like to blame Trump because he didn't do anything to stop COVID, despite people pointing out he literally couldn't do anything. He can't. Despite all his bragging,
he tried to do things like, the travel ban and the screening at airports, and the liberals were screeching that he was being racist.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think, in all honesty, Shane, I think that's the only reason why, we're treating COVID like it's the plague is because it came out during an election year and both sides were trying to use it as a political weapon, whereas other deadlier outbreaks like H1N1 came out after elections occurred, so there was really no reason. Like, wasn't the H1N1 outbreak in 2009 or something?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, so
maybe a few years later. It was during the Obama years, and I remember because my nephew had it, and he was already an adult when he got it, and.
Yeah, you said he was miserable, and after that he said, you know what, Uncle Shane, from now on, I'm getting a flu vaccine every year. I don't want to go through that again.
He said, you all can do what you want. I'm getting my flu shot every year.
Yeah.
And he got COVID earlier as well, so yeah, he gets hit with it. And my niece got COVID, and she was the one who was talking about this skin sensitivity. And that was basically, well, let me thought, because, before it just felt like a sinus infection. But not only did my taste get messed up, I got this feeling of just my skin feels like parchment. It's just really sensitive all over. And that was when I was thinking, I think I have COVID. So I had to schedule the appointment and get the test and the
Yeah, J.C. Armitage thinks that the reason the U.S. government is locking down the economy is to keep all the dollars from over-circulating so it won't be preventing hyperinflation. I just want to say there's better ways to prevent hyperinflation than doing that. Like, I don't know, stop printing money, going back on the gold standard.
Yeah, just don't print the dollars in the first place.
Yeah, and only print the dollars when you have the capital to support them, Don't just print it because the government says, oh yeah, we're going to need $350 million more dollars this year. No joke, if I recall correctly, one of Biden's campaign managers flat out said, it's like, look, we don't have to worry about it costing anything because we can just print money.
Yeah. Which they're about to do again with another $2,000 check, which, I mean, sure, cash it, spend it. If they're going to give you some of your tax money back, don't feel any guilt whatsoever about that. Just understand we're going to be paying for this down the road.
Yep, Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy, Well, again, I mean, I wouldn't mind taking it because the government is, like I said, I can't go into too much detail, but the government is partially why I'm not working. I can't work anymore, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, I swear, Shane, even though I haven't gotten sick or anything, I've been having a really rough past couple of months just because of all this stuff going on, and I'm just like... Hey.
Yeah, another feeling.
Also, my sister is terrified. She thinks that Trump's gonna spark some kind of civil war, and she wants to move to Canada. And I told that to Hawkeye, and he's like, you know what you should tell her? Tell her it ain't any better up here. Yeah. Well, I mean, they've got Trudeau in office, so that should be a red flag.
Yep. Well, and if Heather ends up getting it, that will be an automatic 2 weeks off of work for her, so...
Yeah. And I bet
that she won't get paid for that unless she decides to use her vacation days, but we kind of like to use our vacation days to, go on vacation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's because America doesn't do what the Europeans do. Yeah. Yeah, they talk about, like, oh, well, a lot of these European countries, like, when you're employed, you get, like, all this vacation time and all that. It's like, yeah, and I've also noticed that it's pretty difficult to get a job in Europe.
Oh, yeah. Really high unemployment.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed how a lot of the people that were lobbying for, we need our workers to have more vacation time. It's from, like, the big Euro corporations and not from, like, actually the people. It's pretty funny. Everyone loves to rant and rave about corporate America, but there's a corporate Europe, and trust me, they are 10 times worse than most American corporations are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they get all the benefits of big government.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Shane, I wanted to ask you a question. Well, actually, I don't know if I may have DM'd it to you, brother.
You cut out there, Wes. Hello, Wes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, no, I didn't DM it. I was wondering I wanted to ask about a certain. I think you said it in one of your videos. If not, you can correct me. But I think in one of the videos you mentioned the idea that the notion that a corporation would not exist in an anarchy. I think.
Right, because you don't have any government to give it the charter.
Knew it. Called it.
What?
Okay,
Yeah.
so you were confirming what I. So okay, thank you for confirming me and the reason. See, a lot of people think corporations would exist in anarchy, but the thing is, that's a government given entity system in the first place. You can make alternatives to it, but they would likely be, contractual law, tort law.
Well, you'd basically set up a trust.
A series of trusts, a combination of these, or if you have the closest thing you're gonna have to a corporation in anarchist society would be a business syndicate. I would compare.
Yeah, but syndicates without any kind of government support don't really have, because I mean the only thing that keeps like the MPA and the RIAA going, is all the government copyright laws, and because they're in bed with all the politicians that'll make streaming illegal, basically, because you might accidentally stream something copyrighted, like they just tried throwing into that one bill.
Oh yeah, Pierre. LLCs wouldn't exist either, because remember, all those things you learn about in business school, they're not things that magically appear when a company becomes big enough. They're legal titles given to a business by the government, which grants them some power and autonomy.
Well, you could have something like an LLC in that, anyone who contractually agrees with the company, it would be a part of the contract that, if you decide to sue them, they can only go after the assets of the company and not the individuals. Yeah. So you can have that as part of the contract. But if you go like dumping trash on someone's property and they haven't contracted with you, then all bets are off. They can go after you and your company, and
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
In all honesty, Shane, that's why I hear these discussions about lawsuits and what's the solution for them. It's like, you know what? I know the perfect solution for lawsuits. You know what that is? Abolish them. Abolish them. Courts should only be for two things: criminals or contract disputes. In contract disputes, you don't even really need to go to court. Most contract disputes are resolved, through third-party review, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, through arbitration, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when companies sue each other, they almost never go into court. It's only the real. I mean, you hear in the news about the big disputes that make it into court, but court is so expensive and takes so long. No one is going to do that if they have any other option.
Yeah.
For resolving it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I hate those lawyers that are like, oh, well, if this company was guiltless, then why did they pay me? It's like, because you of all people should know, because it's easier to just pay you the $2 million than take it to court and spend tens of $millions on legal defense. And
because we don't have loser pays.
Yeah. And not to mention, they have to put a portion of their time to fighting the lawsuit, and they might have to take an employee out of work, who was involved in the incident, and that means less production. So for a lot of companies, they're often just told, listen, just pay the lawyer the $2 million, our insurance will cover it, just get away from it, That's why I say...
Yeah, there's actually a term in legal circles called nuisance change, and that's what it is. It's just a quick settlement where you give them a fraction of the money of what you would spend in legal costs if you fought it, just to get them to go away.
Yeah, that's actually what most lawyers do. Most lawyers are like, we're gonna sue you for $500 million, and then it's like, what, are you crazy? But you act like you're really serious about it, and then it's like, okay, here's the deal. You pay me and my client $50,000 each. We'll drop everything. And like I said, most companies are just told, yep, just do it.
Well, and it's like there's a scam where, you draw up a whole bunch of like $5 or $10 invoices, send them out to hundreds of different companies. Most of them are just going to pay it because that amount is so small. It would be more expensive for them to go through the process of verifying it through accounts payable than it would be to just go ahead and pay it. And there are people who successfully run a lot of scams that way.
Yeah, you also said that's the reason why a lot of companies, pay ransomware, even though even though it only encourages the behavior and guarantees it's going to happen again. It's just because a lot of times their hands are tied and they're like, what are we going to do? We're going to miss out on all this work. And a lot of times the lawyers just say, just pay it. We'll deal it with insurance and all that.
Yeah, you have where you're looking at, because you're talking about restoring the entire network. That's weeks of downtime. You're losing millions of dollars. If it's a situation where you're going to lose $2 million, but the ransom is only $70,000,
Yeah. Though I will say I do give kudos to Capcom. When they got that ransomware, and basically they sent a letter saying, okay, here is our offer for the ransomware, $0.00.
Yep.
Yeah. You know what?
Yeah.
I would
The more people stand up to them, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because, when you think about it, yes, it's going to be devastating, but if you don't pay them and won't focus on cybersecurity, it's going to go away eventually because people are going to realize there's no money to be made for it,
Oh, yeah, JC, the frivolous lawsuits. Yeah, because you don't have loser pays. You don't have any penalties for a completely frivolous lawsuit.
Yeah. And some of those tort lawyers, they are just like, they have like the most denialist cultist attitude ever. Like I've seen videos of John Stossel interviewing those ambulance chasing lawyers, and like they are just doing everything they can to defend them. Like the perfect example was when Blitz USA, which made gas cans, went out of business, and the lawyer kept insisting that, oh no, they were unsafe and they were dangerous, even though he showed to them that they were safe, and that all of the burn cases he was falling to were because the people were idiots and were pouring it directly over a fire.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But now, thanks to that, we have to put up with those, ridiculous little spout nozzle things on the gas cans, which, if anything, are more dangerous and make it easier to spill.
Yeah, but they're harder to handle too. I think the best way to sum up these points is the whole stand-up bit by Chris Porter, where the best corporate lawyer defense would be, "Are you fucking shitting me?" defense.
Yep.
Where the lawyer just comes up in there and looks at the plaintiff, the defendant, and then looks at the judge like, hold me in contempt for swearing, but are you fucking kidding me? This asshole over here skied off his roof. Why does he have to be responsible for this one's fuck up? And then it'd be settled.
Yeah, I've heard something like that actually helped a guy escape a 3 strikes penalty because because at the time there was this, I think it was California, there was a really strict three strikes rule that said if you got 3 felonies in a short period of time, it was an automatic life in prison. And one guy who was going to be sentenced to life in prison, what was his felony? He stole a pair of socks, and that's basically what his lawyer argued. It's like, you're kidding me. He stole some socks from a store. Yes, that's bad and he should be punished for it, but life in prison just because it was his third time in the row. And if I recall correctly, all the previous felonies were non-violent. So
wasn't that one of Joe Biden's, the 3 strikes thing?
I don't know. Yeah, this is what happens. This is what happens when you focus your attention on we got to be tough on crime and not thinking, well, what are the chances is this person is gonna repeat their crime? That's a big problem with the American justice system. We're so obsessed with, oh, this person did this, so they deserve this. We're not thinking, well, what is the chance that if this person were to be found not guilty for whatever reason, are they gonna repeat it? A lot of people, say, get shocked when they realize that most murderers only serve like 6 to 10 years. And that's because, contrary to what Detective Now was saying, not all murders are these premeditative killings by psychopaths. Most of them are just accidental,
Or crimes of passion or something. Yeah, what is it? It's like 12 and a half years on average is a murder sentence, and they serve like 6.5 on average. And get out on good behavior.
You hear stories about how it's like, but this guy killed his wife. Why isn't he in life in prison? It's like, well, because it wasn't like he was conspiring to kill her. It was like, like what Penn and Teller said in that one joke. He gets fired from his job. His car gets repossessed, so he goes home to mourn, and he finds his wife in bed with the neighbor. So he tries to drown his sorrow. sorrow with his favorite chocolate ice cream, only to find out they ate all the ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
By that point, he's not thinking.
Yeah, you just push past the breaking point.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but people do snap. I know from first-hand experience, people can and do snap when you push a person long enough, they can snap and do things that they would normally never do within a million years.
Yeah, I think we've got in the chat this same guy who's in the Discord, praising North Korea. Yeah, that should be a lot of fun.
I just told JC and SKM not even engage them, because whether they're a troll or if they're actually a breadlet, it's either one's hopeless.
Yeah.
Saying in North Korea is voluntary. Bite me.
Yeah, North Korea is voluntary, anarcho-capitalist. Yeah.
Again, bite my ass.
Yeah.
That's all I
was about to tell that guy to just jokingly say, I was just jokingly gonna say, oh yeah, nobody pays taxes in North Korea because nobody gets paid. They're all forced to work there.
Yeah, they're all forced to work by gunpoint, but that coercion's still voluntary for some fucking reason.
Yeah.
Okay, they said they don't have Discord. So like I told them, if they're either trolling or they're actually that dumb, just ignore them.
I want to ask, like in the Soviet Union, it's like, okay, why do you have money when capitalism is bad? Like, why bother with the ruble? Like, I want to know that. Why did the Soviets hang on to the ruble when it's like, oh no, we're no longer capitalists? It's like,
well, and at one point, I think it was oh god, which one was it? I think it was Poland. They asked them how they set the prices for things, and they were like, oh well, we just look at how it's priced in capitalist countries and copy that.
Yeah.
So you're literally just imitating the capitalist method to keep yourselves afloat because you have no realistic alternative to their money system. Fuck off. That's all I gotta tell them.
There was this one funny joke I heard about. It was about the Soviet Union. Granted, it's a joke, and they asked the Soviet premier. It's like, how would you have your worldview if you could have it your way? And he jokingly said, if I could have it my way, I would make it so every single nation is part of one giant collective communist society, except for Switzerland and New Zealand. And they asked, why Switzerland and New Zealand? Because we need Switzerland to tell us what the prices are, and we need New Zealand to get our food from somewhere.
Well, they're basically I better not say it because you can get in trouble for it, but I'll just DM it to you. Sounds like a... There we go. But
well, it's a joke. It's a
sounds
joke.
like an NWO conspiratard, but actually advocating it instead of fear-mongering it.
Well, it's a joke. It's a joke about the Soviet Union, about how they claimed that, that they were an example that communism was working, yet they were buying a lot of food from other countries, and they were looking at... And I've actually heard that's actually what the KGB did a lot during the Cold War, is that it wasn't spying on U.S. military bases. It was simply... implanting themselves in Wall Street and telling the people back then, this is what prices are going for, so here's what we'll set our prices at.
Yeah, and when they weren't doing that, they and the CCP were under Mao were constantly funding fucking Hollywood from its foundation to the present. Well, I mean, except when the USSR collapsed, the CCP's still doing that, yeah, but still.
Yeah, that's... Yeah, it was one documentary that, it was one movie I saw that I did not want to see it, and I hate Hollywood for doing it, when they made that video about Dalton Trumbo, because they're all like, oh, he was fighting, the Red Scare and all that, completely ignoring that he was a communist, and during World War II, he actually censored his own anti-war book, Johnny's Got His Gun. Why? Because his precious Soviet Union was under attack, and he was afraid if people read Johnny Got His Gun, they would hate war, and they wouldn't want to go to war with Germany. Yeah, that's the thing that's often forgotten about, was that there was a brown scare during the 1930s and 40s. People were afraid fascists were everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what happened. That's kind of what happened to Charles Lindbergh. You know, his reputation got damaged because he did not want to get involved in the war. And yeah, because he made some anti-Jewish comments, which, by the way, a lot of people were anti-Semitic back then. They're like, oh, he's a fascist. Yep, he's a fascist. Don't associate with him. He's a fascist. Yeah, it's pretty funny. People like to hate on Charles Lindbergh because, you know, he visited Germany and he made some anti-Semitic statements and he praised, you know, like their airplanes. It's like, yeah, you know who else actually praised Nazi Germany? If I recall correctly, FDR praised Hitler in his early days.
He also praised Mussolini and and it's different when you're actually praising fascism for being fascism, and when you're looking at their airplanes and say, "Hey, these are pretty well engineered." Those are two different things.
Yeah, because I mean, come on, there's no denying.
Because there was some really good engineering. There's a story from World War I that I'm going to try to get my COVID-addled brain to bring up, but it was something like the Germans, I think, were the first ones to put the gun, instead of having it up on the top wing, having it right in front of the pilot so that the pilot would have more line of sight with the gun. To do that, you have to sync it up with the propeller so that the bullets go through the propeller. And when, I don't remember, it was France or whoever, saw them do that and tried it, said that's a good idea, and tried it and didn't realize that's what you had to do, and they kept shooting their own propellers off.
Yeah, it was France. Yeah, there was that one French ace who did that, but because he didn't have access to the synchronicity device, all he could do was put armor plating on the back of his propellers, so if he did hit his own propeller, it would just bounce off, you know. Though it wasn't Germany that developed the synchronicity device, it was a Dutchman who did it, the guy that Fokker guy, who was actually Dutch, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
But he mostly worked in Germany, you know. By the way, people still love to blame capitalism on World War I.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Yeah, it's like
because which of those countries involved were actually capitalist? Well, Austria wasn't, Serbia wasn't, Germany wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, there was.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm replying to some head ass replying to me. I'm just typing out something.
Oh. Yeah, because you know Shane is sick, so he can't talk as much, and I don't want to be the only one carrying this off.
That's fine. I'm just
trying
to think of a subject, because I'm trying to think of a subject I wanted to bring up.
SKM is talking about people saying degeneracy will be the downfall of society. I don't know of one society where that actually happened. I mean, people say that like about ancient Rome, but when you look at it, it was really more about, you know, they were debauching their own currency and things like that.
Yeah.
And they just ruined themselves economically.
You know, I saw this one funny joke. Funny joke, Shane, because, you know, it was about all these jokes about how, you know, some of those religious people are saying, oh, you know, debauchery is going to be the downfall of society, and this is what happens when we don't have religion and we lose our faith with God. And the joke was that the Romans were debaucherous, and they had public orgies and public bathhouses, and they prospered. Then they adopted Christianity and they failed. Yeah. Well, to be fair, Rome was already on its last legs when it converted to Catholicism, but still, you know.
Well, even before then, like I said, debauching the currency, and people talk about Caesar crossing the Rubicon, which made them basically interventionist, whereas before they were pretty much minding their own business.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I read somewhere that one person did some economic research on Rome, and he found out that the Romans were actually far more wealthy, prosperous, and powerful when they were a republic than when they were an empire. Because, I mean, the Roman Republic had its problems, but for the most part, it was hands-off and encouraged trade. But then Julius Caesar took over, and it soon became oh no, we can't just, you know, be, a global center of commerce. We actually have to be an imperialistic nation and get involved in world affairs.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to bring up. I remember one of the subjects I wanted to bring up. Do you realize they've come up with in the last several years? They've not only made nuclear reactors they've made micro reactors. One you can actually haul the unit and its parts by 18-wheeler truck and trailer.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Ones they can just mass produce.
Empires are, yeah, JC Armitage says empires are even less sustainable forms than state, and that's saying a lot. Yeah, I think, bad writing advice, even kind of pointed that out. It's like, like with a lot of, stories about how it's like about, an evil empire gets a small group of rebels and all that, and it's like, oh, the empire is perfect, everything, but once the rebel, is perfect of going forward, and only the rebels can stop it. It's like, oh yeah, and it's totally not, they're spending all money on military and all this. And hang on a second.
Yeah, Scam, I think you can tell a lot about a channel as to whether they can whether they allow comments.
Yeah. Sorry, my mom was calling me, but yeah, it's like yeah, only the small group of rebels can destroy the empire, not the empire can destroy itself. And actually, in all honesty, Shane, that's why I love the original expanded universe over Disney, because in the expanded universe, that actually is kind of what contributed to the Galactic Empire's fall. Yeah, the rebels were a big part of it, but the empire was barely hanging in there even long before the rebels came up.
Well, how much do you think the Death Star cost?
Oh,
twice.
Yeah, Yeah, not to mention, here's another fun fact that actually gets that's cool about the original expanded universe. When the Death Star was actually destroyed while the Emperor was furious, a lot of commanders were actually like, finally, that thing was an eyesore. Because a lot of them weren't stupid. They knew that something like that, had very limited use, and not to mention, using it to blow up a populated planet is only going to make people want to hate the Empire. So, if I recall correctly, Admiral Thrawn said, "You know what, Emperor? Just forget about the Death Star and focus on building your navy, because that's what you're really going to need if you truly want to subjugate the galaxy. You're going to need a navy and the ability to patrol the area." But the Emperor was like, "Nope, we'll just build these big weapons that make planets go boom, and everyone will use fear, will be too afraid to stand up to me." And it didn't work. Although, again, and I think I brought this up before, but I still need to bring it up again. My biggest pet peeve with the Disney canon is that it's like, okay, the First Order blows up the New Republic, and everyone's like, oh, yep, that means they win. So that's how it happened in the story. It's like the rebels are trying to convince people not to join the First Order, and they're like, oh no, we have to obey them because they blew up the first. They blew up the New Republic, so they automatically win. Where in real life, it's like, no, all you're gonna do is a lot of warlords are gonna be like, wow, the Republic's fallen. Okay, everyone, now's our time. We strike. It's like you can't just shoot the king and declare yourself the new king. That it doesn't work like that.
Nope.
Yeah. If you shoot the king and sit on his throne, all that's going to happen is his guards are going to drag you away and execute you.
Yeah, you'd need the support of enough court members to pull that off.
Yeah, that's why, that's the reason why when you look at these historical assassinations, they were often carefully planned out. It's not because the person was like this uber, powerful being. It was because, like you said, if you just kill the guy right then and there, you're just gonna have all these people, start saying, "Oh, the king's dead. We can take the power now." No, you gotta not only have the opportunity to kill the king, but you gotta make sure you have people behind you, so they themselves don't turn their backs on you once you've done the dirty work. That's why when Caligula took power, he didn't just stab his uncle. He didn't just stab his uncle/grandfather in the back and say, "I'm the emperor." He got the Praetorian Guards on his side.
Yeah, otherwise, what's there to stop someone else from killing you and sitting on the throne?
Yeah, exactly. The sorry, Cosmic Bread, but the rebels are only really communists only in the Disney universe. And the original expanded universe, they were mostly they were pro-democracy. Like, they weren't perfect, and they definitely had some politics I disagreed on, but still their whole purpose was just to get rid of the empire and just restore the republic, but this time with some major reforms. It wasn't until
I think making them basically communists was just a convenient way not to have to think through the economy of it.
Yeah.
We'll just pretend the communism works and go with that.
Yeah. Which, by the way, by Disney canon standards, it didn't work. So ironically, it ends up hurting their cause. Because it's like, oh yeah, the rebels were these communists that were fighting an evil empire to liberate the people. It's like, yeah, and by your own logic, 30 years later, they completely mess up and get their capital planet blown up. Yeah, that's totally helping your cause. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. It's like,
actually glorious content. Certain defectors of the certain people who defected from paganism and the people who were practicing Old Testament Judaism banded together and formed Christianity.
yeah,
So they were a defection faction within Rome that grew. So no, Romans didn't exactly create Christianity.
Well, it was one of several different factions, and then the factions fought each other, and then the one that won was modern Christianity.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, one person pointed out that basically all modern day Christianity is Judaism mixed with a little bit of paganism in there, because ironically, despite the fact that Christians are like, oh, paganism is Satan worship, there are a lot of pagan rituals within modern Christianity.
We just went through Christmas, and that's pretty much taken piece by piece from Saturnalia.
Oh yeah. I've actually heard that's actually the reason why some branches of Christianity, like Jehovah's Witnesses, refuse to celebrate it, because they're like, oh no, it's not religious, it's Satan worship because it's pagan. You know what I want to ask those people? It's like, if you think pagans are devil worshippers, let me ask you this. How can they be devil worshippers if they don't believe in the devil?
Yeah, because most pagan religions don't have a devil.
Yeah, well, I mean, some gods in paganism are more malevolent, but they don't really have a devil per se, And to be fair, like, people think about Hades as like the Greek devil. He's not really. And to be fair, he only is the way he is because all the other gods kept screwing him over.
Yeah, Hades isn't even the worst of the Greek gods.
Yeah, the worst of them all is Zeus. Yeah, like 90% of all the problems in Greek mythology was either because Zeus knocked up a girl, or because he was jelly that another city-state was worshiping a different god and not him. Yeah. Yeah, Hera was just as bad too. Like, I've read some of these ancient myths, and goddamn, it's like I'm glad these are stories that are just myths, because like, if they were real, like if the Greek gods were real, I would just be like, you know what, just kill me. I don't want to live in that kind of earth.
Yeah, talk about jealousy. She had issues.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, actually, despite what Disney portrayed, it was actually Hera that did all that stuff to Hercules, because Zeus was so proud of, Hercules, that Hera was like, hey, Zeus, how come you're paying more attention to Hercules than you are to me, and I'm your wife?
Well, and Hercules was because, Zeus slept with Alcmene.
Yeah.
It came to her in the form of her husband and took her virginity, and Hercules was born from that. So that's more jealousy, because it's an illegitimate son of Zeus.
Yeah, and you can kind of, and then the proof that Christianity is just a mixture of paganism mixed with old Judaism is just look at the God of the Old Testament. He's doing all the stuff that the old Greek and Roman gods used to do all the time. It's like, what's this? You're doing something I don't like. I'm gonna destroy your city-state. Your city-state. Oh, there's this one human that I kind of sort of like. I'm gonna give them magical powers, or I'm gonna or if it's a woman, I'm going to impregnate her so she can give birth to a powerful being.
Well, JC, the word hell comes from Norse mythology, but I don't think it's the same thing as the modern Christian idea.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, the modern Christian idea of hell is just psychopathic.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's like because your baby didn't get baptized, it's gonna spend 100,000 years in eternal hellfire. And another funny thing too is that if I recall correctly, historically hell was kind of vague, and really there was no indication that if you were sinful, you got sent anywhere. Basically, the way, from what I've heard, the way ancient Christianity was is that if you were a bad person, when you died, that was just it. You were dead and you were never coming back. Whereas if you were good, you would come back and live on a different plane of existence. That's how they believed in it. You know,
yeah, there is no concept of hell in the Bible anywhere. In the New Testament, they use the word Gehenna, which means just the grave.
Yeah.
And when you consider Christians' favorite verse, John 3:16, shall not perish but have everlasting life, instead of shall not go to hell but have everlasting life, that's exactly what they're talking about. You're either going to be dead and in the ground, or you're going to be your body physically resurrected and ascend into heaven.
Yeah, this whole concept of what hell looks like doesn't really appear until Dante's The Divine Comedy. And if I recall correctly, that was more of a satire than it was actually, a serious biblical thing. That's the thing that a lot of people forget about. If I recall correctly, Dante's Inferno is meant to be, a parody and somewhat of a comedy. That's why it's called The Divine Comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was basically poking fun at a lot of things in his society.
Yeah. Like, if I recall correctly, he was even mocking, some of the popes he didn't like, because he mentions in the Divine Comedy that there's a lair in hell that is so evil only a handful of people are there, and one of them was one of the popes that he didn't like. Which, to be fair, I'm sorry, but, people are talking about how, the Catholic Church is out of control. Oh, no, in all honesty, there's been popes that make, the child molesters we have now look like angels. I mean, just look at Pope Innocent. That guy was a nut job. And here's another thing too about popes. Historically, popes were not, put in power because of their dedication to, to the religion. It was because of their family connections.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. I don't think comedy ever meant serious work.
No, I mean... Well, and, and that's another thing, too. It's like, people think, it's like with entertainment, like, another common misconception about comedy and drama is like, for some reason, everyone thinks that, operas always have to have a sad ending. It's like, that's only the most famous operas. There's plenty of operas that have funny endings. The Barber.
Oh no, lots of them are funny. The Magic Flute is funny. You just I'd say the Barber of Seville, yeah.
Yeah. The Barber of Seville, which is the most famous one ever. That's a comedy.
I mean, I think that's really it. The comedy was when you had a happy ending, and the tragedy was when you had a sad ending. I think that was the main.
Or a bittersweet ending. That was another thing too I've heard about. A lot of the dramas didn't necessarily have bad, endings per se, but they were often endings that, kind of ended, and they kind of made you feel like, I don't think the person made the right choice or whatnot. They were ones that made you think, whereas comedies were about, we're just here to entertain you for a couple hours.
Yeah, they weren't there to give you any heavy philosophical thoughts.
Yeah, that's what a lot of dramas were. That's what a lot of, quote unquote tragedies were about. They were more about making you think, about what happens,
Whereas comedies were just light distractions.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, what's also proof? What's also proof about how people who say, well, if we don't have strong copyright laws, nobody will be creative. You know what I say is the proof that that's bull crap? Shakespeare. Shakespeare.
Yep.
Yeah.
What are you going to say, Wes?
Let me give you another example. If I have an idea and the idea comes up in your head, do I own you? If you say yes, you justified slavery. If you say no, you just prove me right and it's bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what do you think happened?
Experiment.
What do you think happened with the light bulb? The light bulb happened when it did because it was basically the right time for that invention, and all the pieces had been in place, and people have been trying to make light bulbs, and then all of a sudden you get 4 or 5 people inventing the light bulb at the same time. It's just that Thomas Edison, beat them to the patent office, and then, claimed that everyone else was in violation, and, had the clout to take him to court. And
yeah, kind of reminds me of that joke from the cartoon The Fairly Odd Parents, where the town's, celebrating their mascot Chompy the goat, and they're talking about a list of his accomplishments, and one of them was, and Chompy, through sheer will and dedication to science, he found the vaccine for polio. And one kid goes, wasn't that Jonas Salk? And the mayor's like, only if you believe in those liars at the patent office.
yeah.
Which, to be fair, there actually is some truth to that. I mean, just because the patent says they were the first, that doesn't mean they actually were the first,
Well, except that Salk never patented the vaccine.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that too. Because I think back
But yeah, it's like you have, some random guy that no one remembers is the inventor of the telescope in like the 1830s, when it's existed for like hundreds of years, because he got a patent for it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and the perfectly good Thomas Edison stole from Tesla. You know what's funny about the whole Thomas Edison and Tesla? People always like to compare the two, but really, and this is really tragic, really the current wars wasn't between Thomas and Tesla. It was actually between Edison and Westinghouse.
Oh yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah, because Tesla...
You know what's funny? Most people don't know this, but Thomas Edison actually invented the original electric grid as a big middle finger and a loud "fuck you" to the copper monopolizers from back in that day, so he wouldn't have to use so much copper to get shit done. He built that in his head and designed it from scratch, from the bottom up.
Yeah, that's actually an episode of Jimmy Neutron that really makes me facepalm knowing the facts now. Is that Jimmy Neutron takes Thomas Edison from his time, and all of a sudden all the power shuts down, and he's like, "Oh no, I just realized I took away the father of modern day electricity," completely ignoring that we don't use Thomas Edison's electrical theory anymore. We use the Westinghouse model, which is current electricity, alternating currents.
Well, actually, the alternating current, well, it required the electric grid's invention by Thomas Edison in order to be able to be used in all the power systems. That's why, because even though you don't use it, you had to start out with his theories before you moved on due to Tesla, Ferranti, Steinmetz, and who were the other 3 big ones? And the 3, maybe 5 guys who invented the first transformers. Like dedicated transformers.
But I mean, it wouldn't have been the case that if you remove Thomas Edison, we don't have electricity today. That's dumb.
No, because somebody else would have done it around the same time.
yeah.
But that's the idea they were going with when they did that power grid shutting down thing. It was because of that, because he was the actual inventor, and so they must have been somewhat literate on the subject. So apparently.
That kind of reminds me of this one joke I saw at one time where a person wants to prevent the Holocaust from happening, so they go back in time and they kill Hitler, in his youth. And then in the modern time, they find out that Germany controls half of Europe, and the reason why is because when Hitler died, the Nazis took another person, and this person was actually competent and knew what they were doing.
Yeah. Well, that's why in Inglourious Bastards, which of course is a complete fantasy, but at least there Tarantino had them say, look, you can't just kill Hitler, you've got to get, Goebbels and Himmler and Goering and all those others.
Yeah.
There were like 4 or 5 people they had to be sure to get. And if they left any one of those, that one would have, taken over.
Yeah, fun fact, there were multiple plans, to assassinate Hitler, and they actually theoretically could have worked, and they actually, were practiced, and there is some evidence that had they been carried out, they would have most definitely worked, but the reason why they were never implemented was because Allied commanders realized, wait a minute, Hitler's doing a much better job at destroying Germany any more than we can do.
I think metal 3D printers are just really, really, really difficult to do. Because, you have the issue of how do you do that without having to get the metal hot enough to melt.
Or better yet, if you do or the other one, I think, is if you just do like a drilling and cutting tool 3D printer, fabricator, that's going to be a more complex build. And two, you need to seal it in an environment, have it contained and have a means to suck up the metal dust so it won't get in the electronics or in the moving parts.
Well, yeah, but they've got those, but that's subtractive instead of additive. A 3D printer is additive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the part. So you got to figure a way to deal with all that metal dust when you're filing and cutting away, so you don't fuck the machine up. So that's another challenge for if you're going to go to that approach with 3D printers and for metal. Then the fact that just because you got metal 3D printing doesn't mean you're going to just magically make metal production go faster. Shit's still going to take 1 to 2 years, maybe longer, depending on the alloy and the recyclability, within the same time span.
JC, you ever talks about time travel. I think, Shane, you brought this up, is that time travel probably isn't possible. And even if it was, it would literally be impossible to change things if you travel back in time because whatever changes you made would either get lost in the mess, or it's basically, I think what you mentioned, it was predetermined, meaning it's going to happen. So it's either going to fail or...
Well, not predetermined. It just has to be consistent.
Yeah.
It's just got to be consistent. The consistency's got to remain the same. But I actually think what you're more likely to have happen is you're going to cement multiverse theory by backwards time travel. Is what I think will most likely happen.
Yeah.
More than anything, because you're not going to wind up in your own past.
But even if you go from a mini world standpoint and you say, okay, you've just created an alternate timeline, that still won't be your timeline.
No, exactly.
You'll still be from your original timeline.
Yeah, that's the point I'm making. You're going to go into another timeline. You're not going to go into your own past. You're just going to go into an alternate reality past.
Kind of reminds me of this other comedy I saw one time where they travel back in time and they go to back when Earth was a lifeless planet, but it had water in the primordial ooze and all that. And one guy accidentally takes off his helmet and he sneezes. And when they return in time, they find out almost everyone looks like him. Yeah. Yeah, the joke being that he created all life by sneezing.
Okay, Cosmic, I will say this. Tesla, I don't think Tesla was what you consider an SJW. I just think he sympathized with women at the time. And his mother was an influence on his creativity, allowed him to express his engineering capabilities unlike any other. And that's really where he comes from. He's used by SJWs to pander to their narrative, but he's also used by the MGTOW to pander to their narrative because he never would date a woman. He'd rather, instead of having a woman hold him back, he'd rather invent his shit. So to say he's an SJW is really stretching it.
And I will say this, because I saw a video on this about Nikola Tesla. Don't get me wrong, he was a very smart inventor, and he did a lot of good things for the scientific community and all that. But there is a kind of like a cult, like a cultness around him. Like they talk about he invented this and that. When the truth is, well, no, he. Like a perfectly good example, ironically, is alternating currents. Like everyone likes to think, well, he's the reason we have alternate currents. If it wasn't for him, we never would have discovered it. No, the idea of alternate currents goes back a long ways, and many people harnessed it. He was just the one that actually got a practical generator working,
Yeah, but an alternating current happens because you generate electricity by turning a turbine, around a magnet, and that's why it's alternating, because the polarity of the magnet keeps, because it
SKM,
depends on your orientation to the magnet.
Yeah, and then what you do to make direct current is you got to make those you got to bridge those those alternating points, and then unify them and make them into a single path, and that's rectification. In other words, DC.
Well, one way I have seen, instead of using nanobots, they're talking about like using basically like aluminum powder or iron powder or something like that. And so you just put down a tiny bit of powder and then hit it with the right kind of laser, and then it'll fuse to it. But that's still a long way away too.
It'll melt the powder into the right shape and molding and whatnot.
Well, I don't even think it's so small. I don't think it's technically melting it. It's just fusing it molecularly.
Like kind of.
Yeah.
Maybe different. Okay.
It's just, yeah, you're just using a laser, like this pinpoint laser on this really, really tiny bit of metal to just fuse it to the metal around it.
No, SKM, I'm not really a machinist, but I've worked with machinists, and I used to be a under-the-table business co-owner with my late dad. I for about 7 years. I stopped the year before he died because he got down and we couldn't do that. And we did fabricate and machine some of our own stuff. Like we'd have to, like, I used to fabricate keyways instead of the aluminum piece of shit they'd have. I'd use the hardest steel we could afford at the time. Like get a sheet of that, a rod of that, and then file a piece out and then file it down to the exact metric what good, so it'd slide in, fit in the keyway, put the crankshaft back on, and put the flywheel back on so it'd fit right over that keyway just exact. And it would last longer than the aluminum one that would break inside, and that's much better that way. Probably, Marco, probably. And arguing with enough socialists, actually, what made me give up my leftist leanings I used to have, arguing with them enough, pissed me off, and I was like, fuck you, which I find a unique parallel to Hayek in that regard. Because I was a Bernie bro in 2016. My dumb ass. Anyway.
I don't think I was ever quite far on the left to be a Bernie bro, but that's kind of the direction I came from, and just realizing that not only that did these things like minimum wage not work, but just how resistant people on the left were to any correction of it.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, not that people on the right are that much better, but that's just kind of the direction I came from.
Well, and here's the thing about the right. You know, the right, you know, from what I've heard, for the most part, they're more tolerant with different opinions. You know, they'll still have the whole, you know, they'll still look down upon you, but, you know, they'll just be like, oh, well, that's just your opinion and all. The left, on the other hand, it's like, if you disagree with them on something, it's like, you're dead to me. That wasn't the case like back in the 80s. It was the right, the conservatives, who were trying to censor everything, and it's like, oh, if it's even remotely anti-Christian, they're trying to put it down. And now it's like everything's flipped around, because, you know, the leftists were like, no, freedom of speech is great, and now the left is saying, no, freedom of speech is terrible.
Shut it down until they want to say something. SKM, I don't know enough to give you that. I'm not sure if I can answer that one. I don't know quite enough to give you a viewpoint on that. So sorry. Yeah. I used to rebuild carburetors, and I used to adjust poppet valve systems, and I used to exchange ignition systems, spark plugs, and change oil and fluids and stuff.
Well, Marco, the thing is, you should never, ever base your opinion on a politician based on what they want or they're trying to do, because let's be real here, most politicians do generally have good intentions behind their works. The problem is that good intentions do not equal reality.
Well, and Bernie also ended up being a complete hypocrite. And I mean, I could see the Bernie Bros in 2016, but, you know, look at what happened as soon as, you know, he got his 3 houses and his $1 million, and
For
Yeah.
fuck's sakes. He was a social justice warmonger just like the ones he was pandering to. I found that out. And in fact, I found out that side rather recently. And then I found, before that, I actually found out about the Cuba shilling he used to do. It really pissed me off.
Yeah.
No
And even for the Soviet Union.
No wonder the Cubans in Florida foamed at the mouth at him.
Yep.
Now I know.
Yeah.
Yep. People who have actually lived in socialist countries do not like socialism.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
No, they know it's bullshit. It'll never fucking work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the only people who like socialism have socialism in those areas tended to be either former members of like the elite police or whatever who lost everything because their reign was over, or they're people who were born way afterwards and they hear all this stuff and they see the propaganda posters and they say, wow, this looks like one hell of a party. You know, it's...
Oh, man, well, see, that's the moral posturing bit the left love to do. The vast majority of the left love to do, Marco.
Yeah.
Market anarchists, they're the only flavor, like certain like mutualists and other left market anarchists I actually can tolerate because they actually tend to be anti-war, but they tend to be consistent on it more than literally every other fucking flavor of the left. So I can tolerate them from time to time. I have a few friends who are of that flavor.
Cosmic Yugoslavs don't exist anymore. And by the way, the reason why the Bosnian Wars occurred was largely because the Serbians wanted to keep socialism. They wanted to keep the socialist, Yugoslavia around, but the other nations, other Balkans didn't want to be like that anymore. They wanted to be their own independent countries, but Serbia was like, nope, we can't have that then.
And that's why they all did secession until they ripped it apart through secessionism.
Yeah.
Which is a great tool for weakening and decentralizing the state, and also using counter economics together, just amplifying each other in a powerful feedback loop. It's my own deduction from that.
Probably the dumbest, answer I've ever heard of, because, we were talking about the whole Russia controversy, and we were talking about the Chechen wars and all that, and I was like, now listen, I don't agree with everything the Chechens do, because, they are led by fundamentalist Islamic people, but if the Chechens want to secede from Russia, why can't they secede? And the guy was like, because Russia gets a lot of its food from Chechnya, and if they were to secede, they would lose a huge massive food production, a lot of people would die, and I'm like, so Russia can't just trade with Chechnya? Or get their food somewhere else? Like, what?
Theodore Roosevelt got it right on the fucking head. There's no ideology that is anti-war. Just how should we approach war? Some support more interventionist approaches to war. Others support non-interventionist approaches to war, aka self-defense. Right on the damn head. Right on the head.
Well, our founding fathers were obviously not against war. Like, they understood that if you're being invaded, you have every right, to declare war on the invaders and fight back. The problem there, that I think that a lot of them were against for the most part was, becoming, involved. Because, the biggest problem with a lot of war is that they can't stop, once it's there. It can't just be, okay, we defeated the enemy, they retreated back to their country, we're good now. No, now it's all about how, oh no, we got to take the war to them. Like if Canada invades the United States and we repel them, it's not, okay, Canada went back to their place. That's good. No, nowadays it's like, oh no, we got to go to Ottawa and we got to level it because they attacked us, so we got to blow up their Capitol building. And what that leads to is, even if you win,
SKM tagged you and I about this one. He said there are people who've calling for Venezuela to be sealed off and let to starve. I don't know about everyone else, but if hardcore Chavistas suffer, I will feel no pity. What's your take on that?
Well, the problem is it won't be Maduro and his cronies who are starving.
Yeah. That's what
it's going to be the people who have been fed up with it for years and years and years.
Oh yeah, I mean, look at Mao Zedong. Look at Mao Zedong. There's pictures of him. During the height of the Great Leap Forward, and he's quite a big chubby guy, and so he clearly wasn't struggling to find food.
Yep.
I do want to say this too about China. I'm in no way a fucking monarchist, just for clarity's sake. But objectively speaking, the monarchist rule of China before the so-called revolution under fucking Mao Zedong and all that shit, China was objectively so much
China
better
wasn't.
under that.
China wasn't a monarchy before Mao. It was ruled by the Kuomintang, which was the Nationalist Party, which was, believe it or not, was actually a socialist party. That not a lot of people realize that it was a socialist party.
Well, I meant the era before that, the Imperial China. I meant to say Imperial
China.
Yeah.
There was the Imperial China. Then in the 1910s, there was the Sun Revolution, which led to the rise of the Kuomintang. Then there was, the Civil War period in the 1920s and 30s, and then the Sino-Japanese War. And really the only reason, contrary to what your history books tell you, the reason why the communists took over wasn't because, Chiang Kai-shek was this ruthless man, who was killing everyone, which he kind of was, but not at that time. The real reason was simply because the Kuomintang was exhausted. They were fighting both the warlords, then the Japanese. By the time Mao's revolution came up, all the members of the National Army were exhausted and had depleted their resources, and there was literally not a lot they could do when they took over. In fact, that's what the
Marco,
what?
Marco, you've got Venezuelans doing everything they can to try and get as much capitalism as they can, including being one of the greatest countries for a concentration of cryptocurrency use. I mean, actually using it to like purchase everyday things. You can, go to Church's Chicken and buy lunch with Dash.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're trying, but
yeah,
they're really trying, Marco. The state is an absolute cunt rat bitch.
Yeah.
It is a cunt rat bitch down there. It's the problem.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, we know that election a few years ago was hacked by Maduro's people. I don't know if it has any connection to Dominion or not, but we covered it at the time on the podcast. It was hacked.
I do know that Maduro, and I do know some of his people and the CCP do. Oh, it was shown to me that there was some connections, like asset owner, like they co-own certain assets in Dominion. I can't definitively say they were involved, but it does show some fucking implications.
You know what else is ironic about historical irony, and it involves Venezuela, is like Simon Bolivar is treated like, like George Washington in Venezuela, and like they have pictures of him everywhere. You know what's ironic? He would have hated guys like Hugo Chavez.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you read historically what he wanted to do, he wanted to kind of implement what the American colonies did, only implement that in, South America. He did not want Venezuela to be a socialist state. Yeah, there's no denying it. If Simon Bolivar were to try to launch his revolutions today, he would be seen as a bourgeois imperialist by the Venezuelan government. Speaking of Venezuela, a lot of people are still insisting that that there were mercenaries during the election hired by America and all that, and that America was behind it. And from what I heard, there were some American mercenaries, but it actually wasn't by the U.S. government. It was by people that were trying to get rid of Maduro through a revolution themselves. And no, that boat was not a part of it. So stop it, Venezuela. Yeah, they're still insisting that boat had American mercenaries on it. We know it did. Yeah. They just can't accept the fact that they were stupid and they destroyed their own ship. Yeah. I just love that.
Yeah, I gotta have someone else to blame, yeah.
Yeah, I just love that meme that says the battle of this bay, the combatants, one Venezuelan patrol ship, the other one was a cruise vessel, and the casualties were, for the cruise vessel, it suffered some bad paint damage, and the casualties for Venezuela were one ship and national pride. Yeah, because that was just so embarrassing. Yeah. Yeah, for them. Yeah, it's like full speed ahead and ram. I'm completely forgetting that. Oh yeah, that's right. The ship is designed to also be an icebreaker for exploring the North and South poles. So it's got a reinforced hull. Yeah, Shane, you know what's the silliest fictional thing?
Hasn't gotten the private businesses to stop hoarding. What are they hoarding? They don't have anything. They can't even find concrete to build new stuff.
Yeah, they can't even find concrete to build a warehouse facility to hoard their stuff in.
Dude, it's all right, SKM. It is fucking. I don't talk as much political stuff in other servers I'm in, because when certain subjects come up after how much shit I've been red pilled and black pilled on, I get an artery pop out right next to either eye. I get in my eyes, the white in my eyes will go blood red, and I almost foam at the mouth like a bulldog.
And by the way, the problems in Venezuela predate the sanctions by like 2 years, so don't even start.
Yeah.
You know what's even more ironic, and it just makes me show just how stupid people are, is that Chavez wasn't the first guy to really implement socialism in Venezuela. Venezuela has been on a socialist, route since the 1980s, because the Venezuelan government was like, hey, if we nationalized our oil fields, we'll make all this money. And it was slowly in decline over and over again. And when it was in decline, and Chavez, basically said, oh, we need more socialism, but he was charismatic, so he convinced the people to do so. Yeah. It's pretty funny, though, because, everyone talks about how they're praising Chavez, but, Chavez was really mostly only outside of Venezuela. Internally, from what I heard, there were a lot of people that were skeptical right from the beginning.
Yeah, his support was mostly illusory.
Yeah. And I mean, that guy was crazy. Even as he was dying of a brain tumor, he still insisted. I've actually heard one of the reasons why he died was because he refused to get treatment for his cancer, because he insisted he was poisoned by the CIA, but it's like, no, you have brain cancer, you need treatment. No, I'm being poisoned. Yeah, he was crazy from what I heard in his personal life. He was crazy. Yeah.
Just.
And it's also so funny, Shane, about how everyone is like Venezuela was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and then it collapses and they're like, oh well, we never said Venezuela was the best thing since sliced bread.
And Marco, shouldn't we tell them to move if we don't like the government? Yeah, I've done that before, and I've also pointed out that when they actually do try to move, government doesn't like it. Like that one Facebook co-founder, I forget where it was, if he was moving to Argentina, and I think that was where he was from originally, somewhere in South America, and he just wanted to move back, and politicians started hitting the ceiling about this millionaire, billionaire, whatever he is, wanting to leave the country.
Yeah, you're only moving because you don't want to pay taxes, which, even if it's true, come on.
Yeah, because...
Yeah, it's like...
That's what they say. If you don't like taxes, move. It's like, okay, bye. It's like, wait, what are you doing?
Yeah. And that's another thing, too, that I hate. It's like, if you don't pay your taxes, they act like you're stealing. It's like, how? How am I stealing? It's like moving away to not paying taxes. That's like saying you're stealing because a thief stole your money, and you're stealing because you take it back. You can't steal something that was already yours to begin with, but it got taken.
Yep. One of the many examples of why the social contract is dead and doesn't exist. Well, if you don't like paying taxes, you can just move. Oh, okay, I'm out of here. Hey, wait a minute, you can't do that. Like all of the things you might do for California, if you move your business to Nevada or Arizona or somewhere like that, California will do everything possible to try and make it like you're still really a California business and you owe them taxes.
Yeah, Schism, Ceausescu. That was that crazy guy who led Romania when it was communist, right? Yeah. Yeah, his name's crazy to pronounce because it's Ceausescu. It's Romanian. Yeah. He's the most famous, but there were a lot of crazy people in the Eastern Europe that were put up with. I mean, hell, even Tito, who everyone loves, was a crazy nutcase if you actually really look at what he did. And it's pretty funny shit because everyone's like, oh, but he's the reason why the Balkans never collapsed into civil war. He kept everyone united. No, all he did was he threw anyone that disagreed with him in jail, which included the nationalists that were trying to divide the country. But that's not fixing the problem. That's just putting duct tape on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The duct tape's gonna fix it, but eventually it's gonna wear off. It's not a permanent solution. Eventually that duct tape's gonna wear off and your sink's gonna be leaky again.
Okay, that was a subscriber. I don't know why this keeps popping back up. I've only told it to pop up for donations and super chats, but sometimes subscribers pop back up. Thank you for subscribing, whoever that was.
I laugh at that term state capital. I laugh at that term state capitalism because I've looked it up and where it basically originates from. It mostly originates from syndicalists. When people are pointing out that there's all these groups that are dictators that are operating what you want, and they're like, oh no, that's state capitalism, not syndicalism.
Well, that's the thing, Samuel Schott. When it comes to I have a quote about Chomsky. I'm gonna actually dig up just so I can say it here, so I can. Here it is. In language, cognitive science, philosophy of war, philosophy of technology, philosophy of education, metaphilosophy, philosophy of psychology, cognitive neuroscience, philosophy of language, philosophy of science, philosophy of mind, analytic philosophy, automata theory, psychology, propaganda theory, computational science, etc., etc. This criticism of foreign intervention is criticizing mass media and how they make up or manufacture fake consent. Criticism of corporate tyranny, communication theory, communication anti-imperialism, anti-corporate activism, mass media theory, criticism of mainstream theory, and criticism of continental philosophy, especially postmodernism. Noam Chomsky has discovered and created some of the greatest contributions to mankind in these fields through the hard sciences and the social science, especially these fields. So he has every right to be celebrated for these achievements. The problem with Chomsky is his biggest flaws are his contradiction in his ideas of liberty, consent, rights, and economics as a whole. It makes him as bad as the worst Keynesians out of either illiteracy at his best, disingenuous lying, at being a disingenuous liar and slander at the worst.
Yeah, it's like Chomsky, stick with linguists, because from what I've heard, you are good.
Exactly, Swamp. Exactly.
And you contributed greatly in the field of linguistics, but stick with that because when it comes to everything else, you are way out of your league.
He was not just that's at his best. At his worst, he's a disingenuous lying fuck. That's the problem.
Oh, yeah.
That pisses me off because I still look at him to some degree as an intellectual mentor because he actually fueled my non-interventionist positions, right?
Well, yeah. The problem is that he fell for the thing that a lot of people had was was, that, he fell for the whole special pleading because, he always talked about how you should always question your authority figures and all. It's like, well, what if the authority is a social democrat society? And they're like, oh, well, then yeah, you shouldn't question them, basically. It's like,
sorry, I got sent something from 4chan. It was hilarious.
What is it?
I'll put it in general. You guys can read it at your desire. It's got some spicy shit though. Be warned.
Yeah, but yeah, it's almost like some of these leaders are trying to make that SpongeBob "It's not my wallet" theme a real life thing.
You're right, Marco. You're right. Because Marx advocated growing the state and hyperinflating it and holding it, keeping it from coercing the public by the democracy, the whole entirety of the masses being armed, pointing their guns at it. He was anti-gun control because that was part of his theorem. Boy, did that not turn out proper.
Well, I think the reason why Marxists became anti-gun was because they assumed that it would work and that the people would always be on their side. And then when they realized, wait a minute, the people aren't exactly on our side and they actually have the means to overthrow us if they don't like what we're doing, they're like, okay, yep, on second thought, only revolutionaries can have guns, which is i.e. the Soviet military. So yeah, sorry.
Right, so they basically shot Marx in his ass, which even though Kropotkin and Bakunin both warned him, or no, actually Kropotkin warned him, if you side with Lenin, you're fucking up, boy. You're gonna fuck Mother Russia. Which is basically, without those words, but that's basically what he said, and it wound up being very true.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing I hate.
They're hypocrites, Swamp. What more do you want? They're psycho hypocrites. Or they're fucking hell indoctrinated cultists. It's either of the two every fucking time. What more explanation you need?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing with Vietnam. It's like everyone talks about how the United States did all this messed up stuff in Vietnam, which they did. But here's another thing you got to realize too: a lot of people from Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam fled to the United States after the Vietnam War for a reason.
Yeah, Marco. The actual Kropotkinite followers knew this before before Marx and his followers teamed up with Lenin. So shit. That was actually that was another one of Kropotkin's biggest main criticisms of fucking Marx. Besides the LTV and all that other and a lot of other things, like I don't see the point. There's no objective way of calculating, so why bother with it? Yeah. Funny as hell. So close yet so far to the type individual.
It's kind of fun. It's also kind of funny too because a friend of mine showed me this fail quote where a person was like, "Yeah, but communists ended the Holocaust and all that," and it's like, what? Yeah. I like to make my own little funny joke. It's like, did you know that in World War II, communism ended the Holocaust? And they only had to kill tens of millions of people to do it.
What a load of shit. What a lie. Oh, but some of these same motherfuckers, what was it? What do they call that? The Holdomer? What the fuck? How do you say it?
Yeah, Holdomir. Yeah. That was the joke. That was
that's fucking... They basically screech, that's not real, just like the Nazis said Hitler did nothing wrong. They're both fucking did do nothings, I swear to God.
Well, that's the joke. It's like, the Soviets brought down the Nazi regime, but they also killed and raped millions of people in the process. So, who's the lesser of two evils? Yeah, I'm sorry, but, the more I learn about, history and all that, I'm sorry, I'm not saying the Nazis were good people, but you can't really blame them for behaving the way they did because, let's be real here, the Allies royally fucked up Germany both before and after World War II.
Yeah, and a lot of that driving force was the reason the nationalist democratic socialism that actually was in Germany from the 1910s to the 20s all the way up until when they voted Hitler in, where a lot of those external pressure factors That's why they did it. Again, not justifying the motherfucker. They did fucked up, but this just shows you democracy sucks.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just democracy's AIDS.
Yeah, you know what else? You know what else really, really pissed me off, because this came from a YouTuber who I actually really like. He was a historian, and he actually made a video where he justified the Dresden bombing.
Fucking Christ.
Yeah, because here's the thing. He kept insisting, well, it was done because they were trying to bring an end to the war and all that. It's like, listen, the guy in charge of the Dresden bombing, I think he was a British commander, he himself admitted that Dresden was of no military, strategic, or logistical importance to the Allies. They did it just to scare Germany. It was their attempt to say, this is what's going to happen to you if you don't surrender, but it actually produced the exact opposite effect, because with the Russians, raping and pillaging Eastern Europe, and the Allies dropping firebombs on innocent German villages, a lot of Volkssturm militias were like, well, what's the point in surrendering if the Allies are just going to kill us anyway?
Yep.
That's why the Battle of Berlin was so bloody, was because the Soviets and the Allies were so vicious in their war against Germany. A lot of people thought there was no point in surrendering because the Soviets were just gonna torture and kill them anyway.
Yeah.
And what's pretty funny about the book Slaughterhouse-Five is that, if I recall correctly, because Slaughterhouse-Five was inspired by the Dresden bombing, and one of the characters, the whole point of the aliens, inventing that device that can blow up an entire planet because they don't want because they want it just in case that their enemies develop it, that was based on apparently some justification that Vonnegut actually heard with people when they justified doing that to the Germans. It's like, well, don't you think it's kind of mean that we're firebombing these innocent villages and all that? And they're like, well, they would have done the same thing to us, so we have to do it. Yeah. You know what else, Wes, that I really want to talk about when we talk about the atomic bomb and all that, is that people are always like, well, we had to drop the atomic bomb because we had to end the war. To which I say, actually, I know a better alternative, so you don't have to drop the atomic bomb and you don't have to invade Japan. You know what that is? Once Japan, all the Japanese armies out of the territories they were occupying, and they're back in their home country, you stop fighting. You don't call for a surrender. You don't call for a peace treaty. You just tell them, okay, you're defeated. We're going to throw down our weapons. We're over with. But remember, this will happen again if you try to do it, because when you think about it, how is the emperor going to convince all these people to go back to war then? It's like the Allies don't even want you to fight. Don't even want to fight you anymore. They don't want to bomb your country. They just don't want you in the other territory. When you take the fight to them, you're only incentivizing them to keep fighting. Shane, you still alive?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Oh.
Starting to drop out a little bit.
Just before we I was curious if you ever got to see that videos to debunk one I requested. If you got to watch it yet before you got sick, I'm just curious.
Which one?
The logic lesson, a libertarian begs the question one.
No, I haven't.
Sorry, what?
No, I haven't.
Oh, all right. Just a fair warning. It's a spicy one. So be ready to have something to calm you, because it'll piss you off. Just a fair warning.
That'll wake you up then. Yeah. The best way to wake someone up is to piss them off.
Yeah, that's true too. That's fucking true.
Yeah.
Oh, JC said. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You first.
Yeah. Why do you think? When you were younger, your mom always woke you up with that deliberately nagging voice? It was so you would get pissed off and wake up.
Or when Dad would just grab me and shake me, get the fuck up.
Yeah. By the way, if you ever struggled to get awake to wake up, before school, guess what? It's not your fault. You're not lazy. It's just because the school systems are messed up. It's like, yeah, the first class opens at 7 a.m. It's like, come on, most jobs don't even begin that early. Yeah, most jobs don't even begin that early. Mm.
That's literally what I think of that swamp. It's a Carolina Reaper level of hot take. I'd almost say nuclear.
Mm.
But JC was saying, getting back on the topic of
What are libertarians supposedly begging the question about?
That's the problem. Like, it took a while to even get to a point, and before I could, I had to shut it off and walk away. I'm like, how? Like, that's why I just wanted to warn you. It's a fucking doozy. It's gonna be a shit. It's a mountain of shit to process. Like, what?
Because begging the question means that you're including the conclusion in your premise. So
that's the thing now, and I've not seen any example of that. Where you'll see when you ever chance, you'll see it. It's fucking it's enragingly retarded. JC, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was about to say, begging the question. Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna make a hitchhiker's joke, so I'm
JC. JC said, getting back to other sci-fi topics or topic of other sci-fi tropes. I meant to say, could psychic powers or overshields ever be a possibility, or will those things always remain sci-fi as well?
Psychic. I do know for a fact psychic is 100% bunk.
Well, I mean, you don't know about an alien species that has a completely different biology and background from us. They may be able to communicate, with each other using radio waves or whatever.
But we do know that for the case of, like, humans being psychics, that's bunk. Yeah,
but if you think about it, we do remotely engage with each other by vibrating air molecules. That's called speech. If you had an alien race that was completely deaf, they didn't have any sense of hearing at all, they might only be able to interpret that in terms of psychic powers.
Or something equivalent.
Well, still, obviously the stuff they do in the sci-fi movies is complete bunk. And actually, I remember that funny Penn and Teller episode where the CIA conducted an experiment to test the possibility of psychic abilities and remote viewing, and they spent over $20 million and they spent 5 years researching it. And what did they conclude? It was bunk and scientifically impossible. And James Randi famously said, "Gee, I could have told them that for $1.50."
Yep.
Yeah. About the overshields, I'm not sure.
Like, what do you mean overshields? Like force fields, or?
I don't know. That's what I'm guessing. I don't know.
But he's talking about psychic powers and collectivism. It is amazing how many people I've talked to who were just completely insistent and completely resistant to being collected that bees are not telepathic. The queen bee is not sitting there, sending out these, telepathic commands to all of the other bees to do what they want. She's just a big egg sac, or ants or whatever. They're not actually like following orders from a leader. It's all spontaneous order.
Hey, this is something SKM wanted to ask you. He said he was tagging you and Fenrir. Moving on to censorship, I have made a few comments on Secular Talk and David Pakman's videos. I have logged out to see if I'm shadow banned. My comments are still there, but there's not been any response of any kind to my comments. Could I still be shadow banned in any particular way? I've had my comments shadow banned by 3 late night show hosts, and they all disappear when I log out.
I don't know. I've never been on those, so I don't care.
I don't know. I don't see any way that I, as a creator, can make someone's comments only show up for them and not anyone else.
I think the only way they could do that is if they have them subject for review or specific somehow. I don't know, but their channels are a bit too big to make that practical, so I can't tell you myself. I don't think so.
Anyway, Shane, going back to what you said about
Maybe they
bees, that's
can.
actually
I don't
another.
know.
That's another sci-fi trope I see a lot in a lot of sci-fi games, is that the queen is like this big, uber powerful, like final boss and all that. Like perfect example being Aliens, and as you pointed out, in real life, the queen of like a colony like species is actually incredibly weak and the most vulnerable, and in many cases she can't even fly. You know, that's why you have soldier and worker ants, because she can't do that stuff. You know.
Yeah.
Oh,
But I
see
mean,
what
in Aliens, it was basically a mother protecting her young. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's plenty of species to do that.
Oh wait,
Yeah.
I see what. Okay, JC clarified. He was talking about the overshields, the armor shielding that goes over the armor of the Spartans, like those in Halo, for instance. That kind of shielding.
I don't
know.
play Halo, so I don't know what you're talking about.
They're basically what they have in the Spartan armor and the Mjolnir series included. They have this little shield. They have this energy shielding that can serve as a way to impede ammo or like bullets or plasma shots from getting through as easily, and they blocks it to some extent. And then by the time it goes away, you take all the blunt damage through the armor and down to your body when the shield gets knocked out.
I don't know much about Halo, but I have heard that in reality, the possible, at least given the stats, it's official stats, because like I read the official stats of the armor, and everyone said, yeah, if that armor were real, it would be way too heavy even for a superhuman to carry.
It probably would, because the fucking look, there was diamond and other kind of crystalline undershielding between the plates and the most inner layers, and then you have that whole shield generation system that draw. I don't know how it's powered. Maybe by a real tiny nuke reactor. I don't know. It's fucking weird.
That's another thing too. Like they always like like in a lot of sci-fi talk, they're always like, oh yeah, and it's got synthetic diamond infused armor and all that. It's like, listen, diamond in real life makes horrible armor. They always say it's because oh yeah, because they're strong and they can scratch everything. Yeah, but that's not the same as durability.
No.
Yeah.
You would be better off. You'd be better off with tungsten or silicone or boron carbide in comparison. Those three carbides. Or if you did carbon nanotube plated onto nitronic steel plating. Or graphene on each side of a steel plate and did that for nitronic steel plating, that would be incredibly durable. That would be a surface that's harder than diamond. I'm sure if you stack those enough, you could possibly survive a sniper like 50 cal. But how much it would take to do that, I don't know. I'm not willing to put that on. I'm not willing to test that out because that sounds too painful. I'll feel that dying. No thanks. Fuck that.
And I think Shane's dead.
No, I'm still here. Just not that energetic.
Yeah. You did mention that you're more active in the late morning afternoon, but after that you just start going downhill.
Yeah, and this is about the time of day I started doing it.
So hey, Swamp asked you guys, actually all three of us, a question. He didn't tag either one of us specifically, so he said, I read a story once about humans who could not feel pain or shock to certain treatments, so they made perfect soldiers as they could suffer several wounds, still be able to combat. Is this possible? Still?
No,
well, I mean, in one sense, it sounds like, they could run in fearless, and just, take the pounding. But on the other hand, if they don't feel pain, they don't have any idea for how badly damaged they are, and so then they take a fatal shot, and
Yeah, in real life, I've actually heard because there is an actual condition where you feel little to no pain, and from what I've seen with the interviews for the people, it's actually not as good as people think it is. They're like, oh yeah, I'd never have to worry about stubbing my toe or getting a hangnail ever again, and they said, no, it sucks because literally you have to monitor everything, and they've said I've actually gone to the hospital for infected cuts, and they got infected because I didn't know I had them, so I didn't take the proper precautions, so they got infected, you know.
Or you accidentally set your hand down on the burner.
Yeah, yeah, or very worst case scenario, you accidentally break, you know, a bone, you don't realize it, it doesn't heal properly, and it messes up your whole body. You know, it's
Yeah.
Well, say if you numbed your hands, I think someone made a joke about it. I forgot who it was, but basically, if your hands are completely numb, they said you can give yourself a stranger.
yeah.
I don't know how that would work.
And yeah, you know, because that's another thing too. You know, pain is not only a way to avoid, you know, getting, you know, serious hurt. It's also done in a way to let your body, to let yourself know something's wrong with you. You know, I mean, sometimes a lot of problems, you know, rise up not because something serious happens, but because like you have this one pain that just doesn't go away. So you go to your doctor and they discover, oh yeah, this isn't normal. It's something, but if you can't feel pain, that doesn't happen. And by the time you realize something is wrong, it's often too late for anything to be done.
Well,
So basically, SKM, you want to be Wolverine. But adamantium bones.
Which by the way, people fail to realize even Wolverine doesn't really like his own existence. He hates it, you know.
No, he hates living the. He hates that existence.
He hates, you know, being. I don't think he's immortal, but it's established he'll live for a very long time. You know, he hates that. You know.
I don't think he's. I think he's ageless essentially, but he. I don't think he can age anymore. But I think he can die. He can be killed. It's just really hard to do so.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is established he can die, and he can die from natural causes. He just doesn't age.
No.
But
well, and he has the super healing, but he still feels the pain.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
oh yeah.
Every time those adamantium claws comes out, he feels it. It's being stabbed.
He feels it every fucking time.
Yeah, I've heard I've actually heard people say that's the real reason why he makes that trademark face when he activates his claws. It's not because he's getting in badass mode, it's because it's literally ripping through his skin, so he has to suck it in, you know.
It's like trying not to cringe from the pain of just essentially.
Yeah.
So he's just yelling it out. Inheritance tax is just it's scummer. It's scumbaggery at its finest.
Yeah.
Why would you tax an inheritance? I forgot who fucking suggested that in the past. It's fucking shit though.
Yeah, Milton Friedman.
No one would consent to that in the first place. Even if you would approach the panarchy model of a government, no one would consent to that.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, Milton Friedman once pointed out to a kid who suggested an inheritance tax, pointed out, if you bring in an inheritance tax, you've basically destroyed any incentive to save anything.
Yep.
Yeah,
same
because
with capital gains, same with
I mean we hear it all the time.
And you're going to make it where people can't lift themselves out of poverty from one generation to the next because they're not going to be able to pass on what they make.
Yeah, I mean, we hear that story all the time. You know, one of the reasons why, you know, small-time shopkeepers still keep their business up and running even when they're in advanced age is because they want, you know, their family, or if they don't have any family, you know, their close friends who they love dearly, you know, to have it, you know. But if you have an inheritance tax, that's going to be impossible. And then when they pass their business and everything they made, it's going to crumble, and now we have to restart again.
So
couldn't Magneto seriously mess up Wolverine because of his ability to manipulate metal? Well, we don't know anything about adamantium, so we don't know if it's ferromagnetic or not.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd get used to the pain. I think he'd just have to just deal with it.
Yeah, adamantium and vibranium is basically, it's unobtainium.
It's a magic element that they need to avoid dealing with. Things like that.
One is they don't give an atomic number, but essentially one's an atomic element that can there's two variants of it. One is in Wakanda and the other is, I don't know what's Antarctica. I forgot what other country it was in, but essentially it's able to strengthen based on sonic or vibration. it's the name vibranium, and the original alloy that was used to make Captain America's shield was based on a super alloy form of iron, and then combining vibranium in a very specific way. Well, some scientists, the original creators, fell asleep and didn't document it, so they tried to recreate it. It didn't work, and it's just have some type of unobtainium type super alloy of iron, and that's became the first adamantium.
You know, I mean, it's kind of weird because some politicians do kind of act like they live in a superhero world and all that, especially in the U.S. military, because if I recall correctly, the word unobtainium was because the U.S. military wanted a fighter jet, you know, to be made out of this material that was super lightweight so it could travel fast and all that, but it was still durable enough that it could that it could, you know, take 25 missiles and still keep flying, and it also had to be cheap, and the scientists were like, we can't work with that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing in this universe that'll do that.
Yeah. Because, I mean, theoretically, they could make something like that. You know, they could make something like that, but there's going to be a trade-off. I mean, heck, they could even theoretically make a plane that is like that. It's lightweight, and it's, you know, super durable, but at the same time, it's going to be super expensive. But the Pentagon's like, oh, no, we want it to have, like, this... We still want it to be within this budget. It's like, well, if you're gonna throw that in, then I'm sorry. It's, you know, you're asking for a plane that's powered by unobtainium. We can't do it.
Yep.
You know,
looks like I made it to 5 o'clock, guys.
Wow.
When people stop believing they're a bunch of guys in suits with made-up titles trying to get people to fund their excessively long role-playing game. Yeah. Thanks for the quote there.
You know, Shane, I feel very sorry for those scientists that worked for both Nazi Germany and also the Soviet Union, because the government was saying, we want you to do this, that, and that, but we also want you to do it without doing this, that, and this, and they're just like, what am I supposed to do? You know?
Right, because, you know, material science, you know, there are those trade-offs all the time.
Yeah. You know, that's
what it's all about.
You know, I've actually heard that's one of the reasons why, you know, the V2 program failed, because a lot of people have pointed out that the Nazis did have, you know, the technology and the resources to create powerful weapons like a nuclear missile, but the reason why they didn't do it was because Hitler was so obsessed with making everything Aryan that if there was even an ounce of, you know, Jewish, you know, scientists within the formula, he would say, nope, you can't do it. So he was forcing his scientists to build these rockets, but they couldn't use the basic rocketeering principles because some of those principles were created by Jewish scientists. So, you know, I feel so bad for them, because it's like they have to build this, but it can't work. And then, you know, the dictator's like, what? It's not working. What's wrong with you guys? And they're like, well, what are we supposed to do? But you can't say that, because if you don't, the dictator's going to kill you.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to sign off then. Thanks, everyone. I'm glad we're finally able to get this live stream out for everyone. And so I guess the big thing is please support donate.bogosity.tv or streamlabs.com/Shane Killian and help me get through COVID. Content will resume once I'm back up and running, but I don't really know how long it will be. Normally, I'd be spending this week going back over the 2020 stuff for the podcast year in review, so that might be a little late, because that takes me days to go through all that. And a lot of mental energy I don't have right now. But thanks, Chris and Wes, for showing up.
No problem. No problem.
Yep.
Take care of yourself.
And hopefully you won't suffer for too longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I was saying, just take care of yourself. And that warning about that video, just like I said, make sure you're as best condition as possible.
Okay.
You might have a few veins pop out in your fucking head. So that's just a good warning to have.
Yep. And thanks to everyone in the chat